I got to become really good friends with the guy in prison who was the son of the Honduran president. The Honduran president was taking payoffs to let 20-ton shipments coming through. And the son, of course, is the point of contact. The adult son was the point of contact with the Mexicans and with the Colombians. And so the Hondurans were taking their pay in product.
The opinions of the guests and host are their own and do not represent the opinions of Ironclad, the Border Patrol, or the Department of Homeland Security.
I guess that's the confusion, is that a lot of people are really having trouble defining where that cutoff starts and ends. And we as Americans have just said cartel for everyone. We've blanket statement that,
Yes.
and which has the American people very confused on who is and who isn't.
Yes.
And then it turns into, there's a form of fear mongering that happens with that as well. There's a lot of little things that happen that create this kind of space of confusion of how do you label a gang to a cartel to just a drug runner who just decided to continue to keep pumping drugs down someone, in some city.
There are no gangs linked to cartels. They don't deal with gang members. You have to come with at least 7 figures to the table. Gang guys are the kind of guys that they're so far removed, they're selling dime bags of weed. These are the guys that when they're broke, they're knocking off a 7-Eleven or a liquor store. People that are doing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of product a month aren't talking to these guys. They're nowhere near these people. Stash houses are in Arcadia. The distributors live in San Dimas. They live in Arcadia. They live in Santa Monica. We had the labs in Beverly Hills. The meth operation for Valencia's organization, which handled methamphetamine, his stash houses were in Newport Beach. Now, you're familiar with Los Angeles. Those are some of the richest, wealthiest cities in the country. Newport Beach, Arcadia, San Marino, Beverly Hills. That's where you find the big money players. There is no tie. Look, you see, the problem here is we're at the point in this country where if the guy happens to be Latino, they're calling him cartel. They're lumping Guatemalans in. They're lumping in American Chicanos in. The Mexicans don't lump these people in at all. They don't even consider American Chicanos to be Mexican.
So let me ask a question just on this. I want to get to other things, but if someone is from Guatemala, Colombia, name it, outside of Mexico, are they not allowed to be considered cartel in the cartel's eyes? Are they not cartel? They're just, anything else other than that?
Well, again, remember, there's 2 spheres. In the United States, they're customers of a customer. They're not dealing with Guatemalans. Now, in Mexico, they'll deal with anybody. Because, see, in Mexico, the American government does not send undercover agents into Mexico to do deals. They lure the Mexican trafficker either into the United States or into a third-party nation, whether it's Panama or Uruguay, where it's safe. Because in Mexico, and again, just to clarify for your audience, we're talking about Sinaloa.
Yes.
And to a lesser extent, Jalisco. Because we had a lot of people complaining, are you saying there's no cartels in Oklahoma? I'm saying Sinaloa's not in Oklahoma. You have 3 cartels south of Texas. They may very well be in Oklahoma, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the Waters Cartel. We're not talking about the Northeast Cartel, and we're not talking about the Gulf Cartel. Presumably, they're all traversing Oklahoma because they got to get through Oklahoma to get to their markets. They're all out of Texas. So now, in the American sphere, they use citizenship to filter out law enforcement. In Mexico, they deal with anybody that comes into Mexico because you're putting your life in their hands. And the American government understands that there is a rule, at least within Sinaloa, do not harm American civilians, do not harm American law enforcement. There is no rule against harming American criminals. So if you're a trafficker and you go into Mexico looking to buy product, there's a very good chance that someone may say, you know what? I'll just keep the $3 million and put this guy in a ditch. And so American law enforcement doesn't go into Mexico to do deals. So if you're an American, and I knew plenty of guys that want to go into Mexico to get product. You can get it in, the Tijuana price is a lot cheaper than the LA price. But now you're taking the risk of going into TJ. And quite frankly, there's a chance you don't come back. We had the largest lab set up in the country at the time. The DEA considered a super lab to be 10 pounds. We were producing 100 to 120. We're talking about ICE at the time. Well, that was out of Beverly Hills. Well, when Armando Valencia, one of the main drug lords from Mexico, wanted to move the operation because they're the ones supplying the material in connection with the investigation the government called the Robles conspiracy. Well, they wanted to move the Robles conspiracy manufacturing from LA to Mexico because we could go 10 times the size of the super lab status in LA, but we couldn't do 1,000 pounds at a time. You need warehouses. They're saying move the operation to Mexico because they can protect it. They have police. The police are all corrupt down there. Well, I didn't trust them with my life in Mexico. They needed the special skills because we had the chemists and the labs. So they'll deal with us in the United States because they needed us here. Down there, what's to stop them from just kidnapping you, forcing you to teach their people how to do the reactions, and then unaliving you and don't have to pay us? And so, yes, there are many Americans that go into Mexico to do transactions. And so that's a different category. So if you're Guatemalan, if you're Latino, if you're any group, if you want to go into Mexico, hey, no problem. I got to become really good friends with the guy in prison who was the son of the Honduran president. The Honduran president was taking payoffs to let 20-ton shipments coming through. And the son, of course, is the point of contact. The adult son was the point of contact with the Mexicans and with the Colombians. And so the Hondurans were taking their pay in product. So the Mexicans were like, yeah, sure, we have no problem transporting your product for you. It's a delivery service. But they're not supplying the product to Honduran customers in the United States. They'll deal with the Hondurans in Honduras or in Mexico because they know that's not DEA. And so always think in terms of minimizing your footprint, minimizing the risk. And so people have a misconception just because they're poorly educated that they're not savvy. They're very savvy. They're very clever. They're just not book smart.
Yeah. Man. So anything else that stood out from that first interview that you want to address?
Well, quite frankly, I spent, I got sentenced in 2000. I was released from prison last year. So I spent 24 years in prison and I essentially missed the entire social media thing. And I have an interesting perspective in that when I went away in the late 1990s, it was a very different world. I've come home and it's like I'm in a different country. People have lost the ability to reason. People are taking just on its face contradictory positions. People are taking positions that are just absurd. This whole I can't tell you how many guys I got. You're not talking about the gangs in the retail level. Are you insane? Or they use the gangs to go do collections. No, they don't. They have a separate team. That's a second Green Beret who handles the domestic affairs in the United States. His team does the collections. His team procures the firearms. So you have multiple teams headed up by American. Last time we were talking about the CJNG's paramilitary wing.
Let's talk about that.
Is also headed up by a separate Green Beret. They can move freely in the United States. They're not going to be sending up Mexican nationals. So you have to be on the Green Berets team to go do collections. If there's an unaccounted for loss, they come see you. They build the network of individuals that are purchasing the straw buys for the firearms to take them into Mexico. People don't understand just how crucial the American military has been in the form of their, former soldiers, airmen. A lot of military personnel have been critical in the development of the Sinaloa Cartel.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard me talk about Firecracker Farm and their hot salt. You probably heard other people talk about it as well. If you haven't tried it yet, let me just tell you, you're missing out on some serious flavor. Their hot salt is delicious, and it really makes pretty much anything that you put it on even more delicious. It's hot, but when you use it in moderation, it's not too hot, and the flavor that it adds enhances without overpowering. It is handmade, super premium, and comes in awesome stainless steel push-button grinders like the one I have in my hand right here. You can take them anywhere. Hot sauce, if you've had this experience, can very easily overpower other flavors and always runs out quickly when it's good. Hot salt lasts and lasts. The push grinder holds over 500 plus pumps, and when you consider the refill it comes with, it's thousands of servings, and it's a great deal and a lot cheaper than the sauce. For those of you that like flavor but hesitate because it might be too hot, you can mix it with sea salt to tone it down and still enjoy the awesome flavor. In my personal experience, you can modulate how much comes out of the dispenser. You're in total control of the amount of heat you serve yourself. So if you would like to support our show and give Alex and his family business a shot, head over to firecracker.farm and use the code Ironclad to get a 15% discount on your first order. You will be very glad that you did. Firecracker.farm.